Welcome to the channel. I know many of you listen to these videos to relax or fall asleep, and I'm really glad you're here. Before we start today's crime stories, please take a moment to subscribe if you haven't already. And if there's any crime story you'd like me to narrate for you, feel free to request it in the comment section. Now let's begin. Story 1. Gennady Mikasevich was born on April 7, 1947, in a small village called Ist. This village was in the Vitebsk region of the Belarusian Soviet Socialist Republic, which was part of the Soviet Union. His family was ordinary for the area. They lived a quiet life in the countryside. He grew up in the years after World War II. This was a time when many people in the Soviet Union were poor and life was hard. As a boy, Gennady did not stand out. He was quiet and did well enough in school. He was not a top student, but he was not a problem student either. He finished his basic schooling without any notable trouble. After school, Gennady joined the Soviet Army. This was a common step for young men at that time. Serving in the army was seen as a duty. He completed his service without any special incidents. He was considered a satisfactory soldier. When his army service ended, he returned to his home region. A key event happened when he came back from the army. He had a girlfriend before he left for his service. When he returned, he found out she had married another man. This affected him deeply. People who knew him said he became very sad and withdrawn after this. He felt betrayed and unhappy. To build a future, Gennady decided to continue his education. He enrolled in a technical school in the city of Vitebsk. He studied there and graduated in 1973. His studies focused on practical skills. After graduating, he moved back to his home village, Ist. He began working at a local sovkhoz, which was a state-owned farm. He was a mechanic, fixing farm machinery. In 1976, Gennady got married. His marriage appeared normal to people looking from the outside. He and his wife had 2 children. He was a steady worker and provided for his family. He did not drink alcohol, which was unusual and seen as a good thing. He was also a member of the Communist Party and even held a minor position in the local party group. Furthermore, he joined the Voluntary People's Druzina. This was a community patrol group that worked with the police to keep order in towns and villages. To everyone around him, Gennady Mikasevich seemed to be a model citizen. He was a family man, a sober worker, and someone who participated in community and party activities. His life, from his childhood to his adulthood, showed no obvious signs of violent behavior to the public. The event that began Gennady Mikasevich's crimes happened on the night of May 14, 1971. He was traveling from the city of Vitebsk to the city of Polotsk to visit his parents. He missed the last bus. He was walking alone on the road. He was feeling very deep sadness and anger because his former girlfriend had married someone else. He had even made a rope loop, thinking about ending his own life. While he was walking, a young woman happened to be walking on the same road. His feelings of anger suddenly turned toward her. He did not know her. He approached her and, using his hands, strangled her to death. He left her body by the road. This was his first murder. He did not plan it beforehand. It was an act of sudden violence born from his own despair. He committed his second murder in October of the same year, 1971. The method was similar. He found a woman alone, strangled her, and left the body. In 1972, he killed 2 more women near Vitebsk. After these first killings, a pattern was set. He would target women who were alone, often near roads or in isolated areas. He would strangle them, sometimes with his hands and sometimes with items he found nearby, like a piece of cloth or, in one case, a cord woven from rye plants. After he got married in 1976, the killings did not stop. His family life and his secret life were separate. He continued to work as a mechanic. Later, he got a job at an auto repair shop. This job gave him access to cars. He began using cars to help him commit his crimes. He owned a red Zaporizets, a small Soviet car. He would sometimes drive along roads, looking for a woman waiting for a bus or walking alone. He would offer her a ride. If she got in, he would drive to a remote place, attack her, and kill her. The crimes often involved sexual assault. The killing was a way to silence the victim after the assault. He also started to rob his victims. He took their money, jewelry, and sometimes ordinary items from their bags, like a pair of scissors. He would bring some of these stolen items home. He gave jewelry and other valuables to his wife as gifts, telling her he had bought them. Over the years, the number of victims grew. The police in different districts found bodies of strangled women. However, for a long time, the police in one town did not fully share information with police in another town. Each murder was often treated as a separate, isolated case. Some police investigators thought the murders might be connected, but others did not agree. This lack of coordination allowed the killings to continue for many years. Mikasevich used his position in the community to avoid suspicion. As a member of the Druzina, the community patrol, he sometimes even participated in street patrols after his crimes. He listened to people talk about the murders. He also learned about the police investigation. In the early 1980s, the police began to think one man might be responsible for many of the murders. They noticed a red car was sometimes seen near the crime scenes. They started to make a list of all owners of red Zaporizets cars in the region. Because Mikasevich was a Druzinik, he was sometimes included in the groups checking these car owners. This meant he was, in a way, helping the police search for himself. It also told him exactly what the police knew and what steps they were taking. He was very careful to avoid making mistakes. The year 1984 was his most active period. He killed 12 women in that single year because he felt pressured and angry at the increasing police attention. In 1985, he decided to try and mislead the investigation completely. He wrote an anonymous letter to a local newspaper. The letter claimed to be from a fake underground group called Patriots of Vitebsk. The letter said this group was killing women they considered immoral. He hoped the police would start looking for a political group instead of one man. Later, after killing another woman, he left a handwritten note near her body. This note also claimed the murder was done by the Patriots of Vitebsk. The handwritten note left at the crime scene became the key piece of evidence. The police now had a sample of the killer's own writing. They decided to compare this handwriting to as many men in the Vitebsk region as possible. This was a very large task. Investigators began collecting handwriting samples from male residents, often under the excuse of routine administrative checks. They collected over 556,000 samples. An expert examining these samples finally found a match. The handwriting on the killer's note was the same as the handwriting of Gennady Mikasevich. This was a solid link. The police immediately focused their investigation on him. They discovered he owned a red Zaporizets car, which matched earlier suspicions. They also began to quietly check his background and movements. On December 8, 1985, the investigators got official permission to detain Mikasevich. They went to his home that evening, but he was not there. The next day, they learned from his workplace that he had suddenly taken vacation time. His coworkers said he planned to go on a holiday with his family. The police acted quickly. They found him on the evening of December 9th at his brother-in-law's house. He had packed luggage for his whole family and was holding 4 plane tickets to Odessa, a city on the Black Sea. He was arrested at that moment. The police then searched his apartment. During the search, they found jewelry, clothing, and other personal items. These items were shown to the families of the murdered women. The families identified them as belonging to the victims. This was direct physical proof connecting Mikasevich to the crimes. Among the items were also mundane objects, like scissors, taken from the victims' bags. After his arrest, Mikasevich was questioned. At first, he denied everything. However, faced with the evidence of the handwriting match and the possessions found in his home, he eventually confessed. He admitted to killing 36 women, providing details that only the killer would know. He explained his methods of using his car, strangulation, and robbery. Psychiatrists examined him and found him legally sane. He was diagnosed with a severe personality disorder, but this did not prevent him from standing trial. His trial revealed a terrible failure of the earlier police investigations. Because the murders had not been properly connected for so long, different police districts had tried to solve individual cases quickly. This led to wrongful convictions. By the time Mikasevich was caught, 14 innocent men had already been convicted for murders he had committed. Some of these men had been sentenced to death and executed for crimes they did not do. Gennady Mikasevich was found guilty of multiple counts of murder, rape, and robbery. The court sentenced him to death. On September 25, 1987, the sentence was carried out by a firing squad. After his execution, a formal review of the previous convictions took place. The 14 men who had been wrongly convicted were officially cleared of the crimes, though it was too late for those who had been executed. The case became widely known as the Vitebsk case, leading to changes in how Soviet militia coordinated investigations across regions for serial crimes. The final chapter of the Vitebsk Strangler closed with the echo of his shots, a stark end to a life that had hidden profound violence behind a mask of ordinary citizenship. Story 2. Sergei Vasilyevich Ryakovsky was born on December 29, 1962. He was born in an area called Saltykivka. Saltykivka is a part of a larger city named Balashikha. Balashikha is located in Moscow Oblast, which is the region surrounding the city of Moscow, Russia. His family lived very close to the capital city. His family was ordinary. His father, Vasily, worked as a driver. His mother, Nina, worked in a local factory. Sergei was their only child. The family did not have a lot of money, but they were not extremely poor. They lived in a small apartment in a typical building for that time and place. From a very young age, Sergei was physically different from other children. He grew to be very large. As an adult, he was 198 centimeters tall, which is almost 2 meters. He weighed about 130 kilograms. Even as a teenager, he was much taller and heavier than his classmates. Because of his size, he was often clumsy. He sometimes felt awkward and out of place when around other people his age. He attended the local schools in Balashikha. He was not a talented student. He did not excel in any particular subject. He had few friends and was generally quiet. He did not get into serious trouble at school. After finishing his basic education, he did not go to a university or college. Instead, he learned a trade. He became a metal worker. He learned how to cut, shape, and join metal. He worked at this job for a living. In his early 20s, when he was about 20 years old, something changed in his mind. He later said that in the year 1982, he began to feel a very strong and unwanted desire for physical closeness with a woman. He did not know how to deal with these feelings in a normal way. He did not have a girlfriend or a social life where he could meet women. His way of dealing with these feelings was wrong and criminal. He chose to attack women. He specifically targeted elderly women, who he thought would be easier to overpower. He attempted to rape several older women in an area of Moscow called Galyanovo. He was not successful in these attacks, but he was caught by the police. The police arrested him. In court, the charges were called hooliganism, which was a common charge for various public offenses in the Soviet Union at that time. He was found guilty. The judge sent him to prison for 4 years as his punishment. Prison life was very hard for him. Among prisoners, there is a social hierarchy. Crimes like theft are often seen as more acceptable. Crimes of violence against women, especially rape or attempted rape, are looked down upon very badly. Because of the nature of his crime, other prisoners targeted him. He was sexually assaulted by other inmates multiple times. This experience made him deeply angry and full of hate. He developed a strong hatred for homosexual men because of what happened to him. He also formed a cruel idea in his mind. He decided that if he ever attacked someone again, he should not leave the victim alive. A living victim could identify him or lead to more trouble. Sergei served his full 4-year sentence. He was released from prison in 1986. He was now in his mid-20s. He returned to live in the Moscow area. He was a large man with a prison record and a growing anger inside him. He went back to working various jobs, including metalwork. He lived a quiet, lonely life on the surface. After his release from prison, Sergei Ryakovsky continued to live in the Moscow area. He worked different jobs to earn money. He lived alone and did not have friends. The strong hate he felt in prison stayed inside him. He began to think it was his job to remove certain people from society. He specifically wanted to kill homosexual men and prostitutes. In June 1988, he committed his first murder. He went to Bitsa, a village on the edge of Moscow. He met a man he believed was homosexual. Ryakovsky planned this attack. He led the man to a secluded place. Then he killed him. He used a knife to stab the man to death. After the man was dead, Ryakovsky did something to the body. He mutilated it, focusing on the genital area. This act became a common part of his crimes. Later in 1988, he began to go to a large public park in Moscow called Izmailovsky Park. He believed homosexual men met there. He killed 3 men in this park. He said these killings were part of his personal mission to cleanse society. His method was often the same. He would meet someone, lead them to a hidden spot, attack them, and then mutilate the body after death. However, his pattern of victims changed. Even though he said he wanted to kill homosexuals and prostitutes, most of the people he killed were not that. The majority of his victims were elderly women. He also killed some elderly men and 2 teenagers. His attacks were not always carefully planned. Often, he saw an opportunity and acted on a sudden, violent impulse. His methods for killing varied. He was a very big and strong man. Sometimes he strangled people with his bare hands. Sometimes he used a rope to strangle them. Other times, he used a hunting knife to stab his victims. After they died, he almost always mutilated the bodies. He would cut or damage the area of the genitals. Sometimes he would perform sexual acts on the corpses, including on the bodies of male victims. In January of 1993, his actions became even more violent. He killed a 73-year-old man. After the man was dead, Ryakovsky cut off the man's head with his hunting knife. He left the scene. The next day, he returned to where the body was. He then cut off one of the man's legs. His next victim was a 65-year-old woman. He killed her, and then he did something unusual. He placed a weak pyrotechnic device, similar to a firework, into her stomach area. He set it off. The explosion ruptured her abdomen. After that, he killed a 16-year-old boy. He hanged the boy from a tree or a structure. While the boy was hanging, Ryakovsky cut open his abdomen and removed his internal organs. This is called evisceration. Finally, he cut off the boy's head. During this time, from 1988 to 1993, the police found the bodies. The police knew a serial killer was active in the Moscow area. They did not know who it was. The killings seemed random. The victims were different types of people: old women, old men, young men, a teenager. The police could not find a clear connection between all the victims. This made the investigation very difficult. The only connection was the extreme violence and mutilation after death. The press began to call the unknown killer the Balashika Ripper, because the first bodies were found near Balashika. They also called him the hippopotamus, because of the large size suggested by the strength of the attacks. Ryakovsky was careful. He did not kill everyone he met. He chose times and places where he was unlikely to be seen. He lived a normal life during the day. He went to work. He shopped for food. He acted like a quiet, ordinary man. No one in his neighborhood suspected him. He did not know his victims personally. They were strangers to him. The police investigation into the murders continued without a suspect. In April 1993, police officers were conducting a routine search of a forested area near Moscow where crimes had occurred. During this search, they found a small, isolated shack. Inside the shack, they discovered a noose fixed to the ceiling. The noose was made of strong rope. The police believed this shack was being prepared for a future murder. They decided not to remove the noose. Instead, they set a hidden watch on the shack. Officers waited in concealment nearby to see if anyone would return to the location. On April 13, 1993, a very large man approached the shack. This man was Sergei Ryakovsky. He entered the shack, and the police officers moved in to arrest him. Ryakovsky was known for his great physical strength and violent behavior. However, when he saw the police officers and their weapons, he did not fight. He later explained that he was frozen with fear. The officers arrested him without any struggle. After his arrest, the police began to question him. At first, Ryakovsky was cooperative. He confessed to the murders. He agreed to take investigators to the various crime scenes. He showed them where he had killed people and where he had left the bodies. He clearly described his methods of killing, such as strangulation and stabbing. He also described the mutilations he performed after death. His confessions matched the evidence found by the police. During a search of Ryakovsky's home, the police found important evidence. They discovered a personal diary. In this diary, Ryakovsky had written a list of his attacks and murders. He had recorded the dates and details. This diary served as a strong piece of evidence against him. The police also found writings for a science fiction story he was working on. The story involved a character who carried out violent cleansing operations. Psychiatrists from the Serbsky Institute in Moscow examined Ryakovsky. They determined that he had necrophiliac tendencies, meaning an attraction to corpses. They believed this was caused by a problem in his central nervous system. However, they found him to be sane. This meant he understood the difference between right and wrong. The court could therefore hold him fully responsible for his actions. When Ryakovsky was told about this psychiatric diagnosis, his behavior changed. He had been cooperative, but now he became difficult. He stopped helping the investigators. He demanded that the experts who examined him be punished. He took back his earlier confessions and said he was innocent. In 1993, there was a political crisis in Russia. Ryakovsky wrote a letter to a political leader named Alexander Rutskoy. In the letter, he claimed he was a victim of the government and hoped the political situation would free him. Despite him taking back his confessions, the evidence was very strong. The police had his diary, the crime scene matches, and his earlier detailed statements. He was put on trial for the murders of 19 people. In July 1995, the court found him guilty of all charges. The sentence at that time was death by firing squad. After hearing the verdict, Ryakovsky said, "I will be back." However, in 1996, Russia introduced a moratorium, which is a temporary ban, on carrying out the death penalty. Therefore, Ryakovsky's sentence was changed to life imprisonment. He was sent to a maximum security prison colony in a region called Mordovia. In prison, Ryakovsky kept to himself. He read books by science fiction authors he liked. He did not cause major problems for the prison guards. He served his life sentence for years. His health began to fail. He developed tuberculosis, a serious lung disease. The disease was not treated properly over a long period. On November 12, 2007, Sergei Ryakovsky died in prison from complications of tuberculosis. The victims' families received confirmation that the killer had been caught and would never be free again. The case of the Balashika Ripper was closed. Sergei Ryakovsky died in prison while serving a life sentence for his crimes. Story 3. Andrei Chikatilo was born on October 16, 1936, in a small village named Yablokne in Ukraine. This region was then part of the Soviet Union. His family lived in deep poverty. His parents, Roman and Anna, were laborers on a collective farm. They were not paid wages for their work. Instead, their payment was the right to use a small plot of land behind their home to grow vegetables. The family lived in a one-room hut with a dirt floor. This period in Soviet Ukraine was marked by great hunger due to government policies. From his earliest memories, Chikatilo knew starvation. His family rarely had enough to eat. He later claimed he did not taste real bread until he was 12 years old. In desperate times, he and his family would collect grass and leaves to boil into a thin soup, trying to fill their stomachs. This constant hunger left him physically weak and his belly often swollen. A story from his childhood deeply affected him. His mother repeatedly told him that before he was born, he had an older brother named Stepan. She said that during the worst famine, 4-year-old Stepan was kidnapped by their starving neighbors, killed and eaten. It is not known if this story was true or if Stepan ever existed, but Chikatilo believed it. He grew up with the idea that the world was a vicious and terrifying place where people could do anything to survive. When the Second World War reached the Soviet Union in 1941, his father was taken into the Red Army. Roman Chikatilo was later wounded in battle and captured by German forces, becoming a prisoner of war. With his father gone, Andrei lived alone with his mother. Between 1941 and 1944, their village was occupied by Nazi German troops. Chikatilo later described witnessing horrors, bombings, shootings, and houses set on fire. He and his mother would hide in cellars and ditches. On one occasion, they were forced to watch as their own family hut burned to the ground. During the war, with his father absent, Andrei shared a single bed with his mother. He was a chronic bedwetter. His mother would beat him and shout at him each time this happened. In 1943, his mother gave birth to a baby girl, Tatiana. Because his father had been away since 1941, he could not have been the father. It was common during the war for Ukrainian women to be raped by German soldiers, and it is likely this was how Tatiana was conceived. Living in a one-room hut, this traumatic event may have happened in young Andrei's presence. In 1944, he began school. He was a shy and studious boy, but his poverty was obvious. He wore simple, homespun clothes. The hunger continued even after the war, and he sometimes fainted from weakness at school. Other children, who were stronger and better dressed, bullied him constantly. They mocked his timid nature and his poor clothing. At home, his mother was harsh and critical of both Andrei and his sister. His sister Tatiana later recalled that while their father was kind, their mother was unforgiving. To escape the bullying and his own weakness, Chikatilo turned to books and studying. He read constantly and worked hard to memorize facts. He was nearsighted, which made it hard to see the blackboard, so he studied even more at home to keep up. His teachers saw him as an excellent, obedient student and praised him often. This praise was likely his only source of self-worth. As a teenager, he became a dedicated communist. He was appointed editor of his school newspaper and later became the head of the Student Communist Committee. He organized street marches and read communist political books passionately. He was the only student from his poor farming community to finish the final year of school, graduating with high grades in 1954. Around the time he became an adult, Chikatilo discovered a serious personal problem. He suffered from chronic impotence. He was unable to get or maintain an erection. This filled him with shame and made his existing social awkwardness much worse. He was terribly shy around women. He developed a crush on a girl named Lilia, but was too nervous to ever ask her on a date. Around age 17, in a disturbing incident, he jumped on an 11-year-old friend of his sister, wrestled her to the ground, and ejaculated while she struggled. After school, he applied to Moscow State University, but was not accepted. He believed it was because his father was seen as a traitor for being captured in the war, but the truth was other students had better exam scores. He left home and worked as a laborer before enrolling in a technical school to become a communications technician in 1955. There, he had his first serious girlfriend. They tried to have sex several times, but he failed each time due to his impotence. After a year and a half, she ended the relationship. After his technical training, he worked on a construction project and took engineering courses. In 1957, he was drafted into the Soviet Army. He served until 1960, first with border guards and then with a KGB communications unit in East Berlin. His service record was good, and he joined the Communist Party just before leaving the army. He returned to his home village afterward. He soon began a relationship with a local divorcee. Their attempts at sex failed due to his impotence. The woman innocently asked her friends for advice on how to help him, and soon the entire community learned of his problem. Humiliated, Chikatilo tried to hang himself. His mother and neighbors stopped him. He later said, "I was so ashamed. I had to run away from there." He moved to a town near Rostov-on-Don in 1961 to start over. His sister Tatiana later moved in with him. She noticed he was very shy around women and decided to help him find a wife. In 1963, she introduced him to a woman named Feodosia Odnikiva. They married after knowing each other for only 2 weeks. Chikatilo later said the marriage was arranged by his family. Their sexual life was minimal and unsuccessful. He claimed the only way his wife could conceive was by him ejaculating externally and manually placing the semen inside her. They had 2 children, a daughter, Ludmila, born in 1965, and a son, Yuri, born in 1969. Seeking a better career, Chikatilo began studying Russian literature and philology through a correspondence course with Rostov University in 1964. He earned his degree in 1970. Before finishing his degree, he got a job managing local sports activities. A year later, he began his career as a teacher of Russian language and literature at a vocational school in Novoshakhtinsk. He was a knowledgeable but ineffective teacher. He could not control his classes and was often mocked by his students. One of his duties was to check on students in their dormitories in the evening. He later admitted he would sometimes enter the girls' dormitory hoping to see them undressed. On other occasions, he saw teenage students having sex, which he said disturbed him greatly, as he was confronted with children doing what I hadn't done even when I was 30 years old. In May 1973, he committed his first known sexual assault on a student. While swimming, he grabbed a 15-year-old girl, groped her, and ejaculated as she struggled. Months later, he locked a teenage girl in his classroom, beat her, and sexually assaulted her. He was not fired for these acts, though complaints were made. He was eventually forced to resign from that school and found another teaching job in a different town. By the mid-1970s, his urges grew stronger. He began loitering near public toilets to spy on young girls. He would buy chewing gum to give to girls he met, using it to start conversations and gain their trust. He sexually assaulted at least 3 young girls this way. His teaching career finally ended in March 1981 after numerous complaints of molesting students of both sexes. That same month, he started a new job as a supply clerk for a factory in Rostov. This job required him to travel across the Soviet Union to buy materials or negotiate contracts. This travel would give him new opportunities and cover for his actions. Andrei Chikatilo's new job as a supply clerk involved frequent travel across the Soviet Union by train and bus. This travel gave him privacy and placed him in busy transit hubs where many young or vulnerable people could be found. His first known murder happened on December 22, 1978, in Shakti. He had secretly bought a small, rundown hut there earlier that year. On that evening, he saw a 9-year-old girl named Yelena Zakitnova walking home from an ice skating rink. He approached her and managed to lure her into his hut. Inside, he tried to rape her but could not achieve an erection. When the girl struggled and resisted, he put his hands around her throat and choked her. He then stabbed her 3 times in the stomach with a knife. He later recalled that the act of stabbing her caused him to ejaculate. After she lost consciousness, he carried her body to the nearby Grashevka River and threw it in. The body was found 2 days later under a bridge. The police investigation found several clues pointing to Chikatilo. Neighbors had seen him near the hut that evening. Drops of blood were found in the snow nearby. A witness described a man matching Chikatilo talking to Yelena at a bus stop. However, the police arrested a different man, Alexander Kravchenko, a laborer with a prior rape conviction. Under pressure, Kravchenko confessed. Despite later retracting his confession and having an alibi, he was convicted and executed in 1983. Chikatilo was not suspected. This first murder unlocked a terrible compulsion in Chikatilo. He found he could only achieve sexual arousal and orgasm through violent stabbing. The urge to repeat the experience grew strong. He later said he would sometimes cut business trips short and return home to avoid the temptation to hunt for a victim, but the urges eventually overpowered his resistance. His second murder occurred on September 3, 1981, in Rostov. He left a public library and saw a 17-year-old boarding school student named Larissa Tkachenko at a bus stop. He started a conversation and lured her to a secluded forest near the Don River, promising they could drink vodka and relax there. Once they were alone, he pushed her to the ground and tried to rip her clothes off. When he again failed to perform sexually, he became frantic. To silence her screams, he forced handfuls of mud into her mouth. He then beat her and strangled her to death. Having no knife, he mutilated her body with a sharp stick and with his teeth. He tore one of her nipples off with his teeth. He loosely covered the body with leaves and branches before leaving. It was found the next day. For nearly 9 months, he did not kill again. Then, on June 12, 1982, he was traveling by bus to buy vegetables. He got off at a village called Donskoy and decided to walk. On the road, he met a 13-year-old girl named Lyubov Buryak, who was carrying shopping bags home. He walked with her, making conversation. When their path was hidden by bushes, he attacked her. He dragged her into the undergrowth, tore her dress, and stabbed her many times while simulating sex. An examination found 22 knife wounds on her head, neck, chest, and pelvic area. This murder marked a change. He no longer tried to resist his urges. From this point on, Chikatilo began to kill frequently, establishing a clear pattern. He would visit bus stations, railway stations, or crowded public areas. He targeted teenagers, runaways, and homeless people who seemed alone or vulnerable. He used simple, non-threatening ruses to gain their trust. He would offer help, show them a shortcut, promise them alcohol or money, or talk about shared interests like stamps or coins. He was a middle-aged, ordinary-looking man, often wearing glasses and a suit, which did not seem threatening. Once he led a victim to a secluded place, usually a forest, a field, or a remote area near railway tracks, he would attack. He often carried a knife, a length of rope, and sometimes Vaseline. He would typically try to bind the victim's hands behind their back. To stop screams, he would stuff the victim's mouth with dirt, mud, or pieces of their own clothing. He would then attempt sexual intercourse, but would inevitably fail. This failure, especially if the victim mocked him, would send him into a rage. He would achieve orgasm only by repeatedly stabbing and slashing the victim. The killings were intensely violent, with many victims suffering dozens of wounds. After the murder, he would often mutilate the body. He frequently focused on the eyes. He later said he believed an old superstition that the image of the killer was imprinted on the victim's eyes, so he would stab or gouge them out. He also sometimes removed sexual organs or parts of the intestines. He made only weak efforts to hide the bodies, usually just covering them with leaves or branches. He would then calmly leave, wash himself if possible, and continue his business travel or return home. His victims in 1982 included a 16-year-old runaway, a young vagrant, and a 9-year-old boy. On December 11, 1982, he lured a 10-year-old girl named Olga Stolmakanok off a bus. He took her to a cornfield and stabbed her over 50 times. He then cut open her chest and removed her uterus and part of her lower bowel. Her body was found months later, in April 1983. By early 1983, police in the Rostov region began to notice a pattern in several unsolved murders of young people. The savagery and similar mutilations, especially the wounds to the eyes, suggested one killer. A special investigative group was formed, codenamed Operation Forest Path. They theorized the killer was likely a mentally ill man, possibly a homosexual or pedophile. They began checking the alibis of known sex offenders and mentally ill patients from the area, but this led nowhere. Chikatilo continued to kill. He murdered a 15-year-old Armenian runaway in June 1983. In July, he killed a 13-year-old girl with a mental disability whom he knew. In August, he killed his youngest victim, a 7-year-old boy named Igor Gudkov, in a Rostov park. The police were now under great pressure, but had no solid leads. Their investigation was complicated by several false confessions from mentally disabled people who were coerced by police. Chikatilo's methods evolved slightly. He now always carried a knife. He became more confident in approaching victims in bustling transport hubs. On October 27, 1983, he killed a 19-year-old prostitute named Vera Shevkin. Her body was found with the characteristic mutilations, but her eyes were untouched. On December 27th, he lured a 14-year-old boy, Sergei Markov, from a train at a remote station. He stabbed the boy over 70 times and removed his sexual organs. In March 1984, he approached a 10-year-old boy, Dmitry Tashnikov, at a stamp-collecting kiosk. He pretended to be a fellow collector and said he had rare stamps at home. Several witnesses saw the well-dressed man leading the boy away. The boy's body was found days later. Police found the killer's footprint and, for the first time, recovered semen and saliva from the victim's clothing. This gave them a biological profile. The killer had type AB semen. In May 1984, Chikatilo committed a double murder. He met a woman, Tatiana Petrosyan, whom he had known for years, and her 10-year-old daughter, Svetlana, at a market. He convinced them to follow him into the woods to get cheap pork. There, he killed the mother. The daughter saw this and tried to run. He chased her, caught her, and killed her with a hammer. He then decapitated her. Through the summer of 1984, he killed several more young women and boys around Rostov. The investigation was massive but scattered. In September 1984, police officers conducting surveillance at a Rostov bus station noticed Chikatilo's odd behavior. He was loitering, trying to talk to young women, and rubbing himself against crowds. They arrested him. A search found a knife, rope, and Vaseline in his bag. He was also under investigation for stealing linoleum from his workplace, so they could hold him. He matched the general description of a suspect, and his past as a teacher accused of molestation was suspicious. The police took a sample of his blood. The test showed his blood type was A. The semen found on several victims was type AB. Because of this difference, the investigators mistakenly ruled him out as a suspect. They did not yet understand that a person's semen type can be different from their blood type. He was convicted only of the minor theft charge, expelled from the Communist Party, and served a 3-month prison sentence. He was released in December 1984. After his release, he got a new supply job in a different town and was more careful. He did not kill again for over 7 months. The police noticed the killings had stopped and wondered if the killer had moved, died, or been imprisoned for another crime. Chikatilo's next murder was on August 1st, 1985, near Moscow. He was on a business trip and met an 18-year-old woman, Natalia Poklostova, at a train station near an airport. He lured her into the woods, bound her, stabbed her 38 times, and strangled her. He killed another woman in Rostov later that month. The killer had clearly returned. Frustrated, the investigation team consulted a psychiatrist, Dr. Alexander Buchanovsky, to create a profile. The profile described a man between 45 and 50, educated, married with children, but socially and sexually incompetent. He would have a job that required travel, likely tied to a work schedule. The profile was accurate, but did not lead directly to Chikatilo. For most of 1986 and 1987, Chikatilo killed very few people in the Rostov area, leading police to think he might have moved. In reality, he was committing murders during business trips to other parts of the country, like the Ural Mountains and Leningrad, where the killings were not connected to the Rostov investigation. He resumed killing in the Rostov region in 1988. In April, he killed an unidentified woman near a train station, bludgeoning her with a concrete slab. In May, he killed a 9-year-old boy in Ukraine. In July, he killed a 15-year-old boy near a railway halt called Donlaskaz. The body was not found until 1989. In 1989 and 1990, the killings became more frequent again. He killed a 16-year-old girl in his own daughter's empty apartment, dismembering her body and hiding it in a sewer. He killed an 11-year-old boy and buried him in a cemetery. The police were now fully aware the original killer was active again. Public and political pressure on the investigators was immense. The Soviet Union was opening up, and the media began reporting on the Forest Strip serial killer, causing panic. Chikatilo's final murders happened in late 1990. On October 17th, he killed 16-year-old Vadim Grimov near the Donlaskaz railway halt. On October 30th, he killed another 16-year-old boy, Viktor Tishchenko. During this struggle, Tishchenko bit Chikatilo's finger hard, breaking the bone. Chikatilo did not seek medical help. On November 6th, he killed his last victim, a 22-year-old homeless woman named Svetlana Karostik, in the woods near the same Donlaskaz station. After killing Karostik, he walked to a water pump at the station platform to wash his hands and face. His coat was dirty, and he had a red smear on his cheek. An undercover police officer named Igor Rybakov, who was part of a huge operation saturating the area with officers, saw him and thought he looked suspicious. He was not dressed for gathering mushrooms, the only common reason to be in those woods. Rybakov stopped him, checked his identification papers, and let him go, but filed a routine report with his name. The undercover officer's routine report from November 6, 1990, was filed alongside others from the massive police operation. On November 13th, the body of Svetlana Karostik, the last victim, was discovered near the Donlaskaz railway halt. The investigation leaders, Viktor Burakov and Mikhail Fedosov, immediately gathered all reports from officers who had been stationed at the area's train halts in the previous week. Officer Rybakov's report noted a man named Andrei Chikatilo, who had grass stains and a possible blood smear on him. The name was familiar to veteran investigators. Chikatilo had been on a suspect list compiled in 1987 and had been arrested and questioned in 1984, only to be released due to a perceived blood type mismatch. Police quickly pulled Chikatilo's file. They saw his address, his place of work, and his history as a teacher accused of molestation. They then cross-referenced his work travel records with the dates and locations of the murders. They found that his business trips consistently placed him in the same cities and towns where victims had disappeared. This pattern was the first strong, tangible link between one person and the long series of crimes. A decision was made to place him under immediate, constant surveillance. Starting on November 14th, plainclothes officers followed Chikatilo everywhere. They observed his behavior at bus and train stations. He was seen repeatedly approaching lone teenagers or young women, engaging them in conversation, and then moving on if they showed disinterest. His actions matched the pattern of a predator searching for a victim. After 6 days of surveillance, on November 20th, officers saw him leave his home with a large empty jar. He filled it with beer at a kiosk and wandered the streets of Novicherkassk, seemingly trying to casually interact with children. Based on this behavior and the overwhelming circumstantial evidence, the order was given to arrest him. As he left a cafe, 4 officers surrounded him. He offered no resistance and was handcuffed and driven to police headquarters. Upon arrest, Chikatilo was searched. The officers noted a deep, untreated wound on his finger. It appeared to be a human bite mark. This matched evidence from the murder of Viktor Tishchenko, whose body showed signs of a fierce struggle. During his initial processing, Chikatilo complained that he had been wrongly suspected once before. He was placed in a cell with a police informant to see if he would talk. The formal interrogation began the next day, led by Procurator Isa Kostoyev. The strategy was to treat Chikatilo as a sick man who needed help, hoping this would lead to a confession. Police knew their case was largely circumstantial. They had 10 days under Soviet law to charge him or let him go. A critical scientific error was now corrected. In 1984, Chikatilo had been eliminated as a suspect because his blood type was A, while the killer's semen found on victims was type AB. This time, investigators ordered a test of Chikatilo's semen. The result was type AB. They finally understood that the killer's semen type could differ from his blood type. This removed the major obstacle that had cleared him 6 years earlier and provided direct physical evidence linking him to the crimes. For days, Chikatilo denied any involvement in murder, though he admitted to molesting students. The interrogators then brought in the psychiatrist, Dr. Alexander Buchanovsky, who had written the 1985 profile. On November 29th, Buchanovsky spoke with Chikatilo, calmly discussing the psychological profile of the killer. He read sections that described a man with profound sexual inadequacy who found release only in violent stabbing. This direct, non-judgmental understanding broke Chikatilo's defenses. He began to cry and, over several hours, confessed to Buchanovsky that he was the killer. He said he was ready to talk to the prosecutors. With the 10-day deadline looming, Kostoyev presented Chikatilo with formal charges. Now cooperative, Chikatilo provided detailed confessions. He described how he lured victims, his methods of killing, and the mutilations. His knowledge of specific, unreleased details proved his guilt. He confessed to 36 murders initially linked to the Forest Strip investigation. He also began confessing to other murders outside the Rostov region that police had not connected to him. He led investigators to the buried body of a young boy, Alexei Kobatov, providing incontrovertible proof. In total, he confessed to 56 murders committed between 1978 and 1990. Following the confessions, Chikatilo was sent to the Serbsky Institute in Moscow for a 2-month psychiatric evaluation in August 1991. The psychiatrists concluded that while he had a severe personality disorder with sadistic and paranoid features, he understood the criminality of his actions and could control his behavior. He was found legally sane and fit to stand trial. The trial began on April 14, 1992, in a Rostov courtroom. It was a major public spectacle, one of the first high-profile trials in post-Soviet Russia. Chikatilo was kept in a special iron cage in the courtroom for his protection, as the room was filled with angry relatives of the victims. The judge read the list of 53 formal murder charges and 5 counts of sexual assault. The proceedings were chaotic. Chikatilo was often uncooperative, shouting over the judge, singing communist songs, or exposing himself. He sometimes refused to speak for days. He initially confirmed his confessions, but later withdrew some and claimed others. His defense lawyer argued that he was insane and should be sent to a psychiatric hospital, not executed. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: travel records placing him at crime scenes, the semen test, the bite mark on his finger matching a victim's dental pattern, and his own detailed confessions. The prosecution demanded the death penalty. On October 14th, after a trial lasting 6 months, the judge found Andrei Chikatilo guilty of 52 of the 53 murders and all sexual assault charges. He was sentenced to death for each murder. Chikatilo's appeals were rejected. His plea for clemency to President Boris Yeltsin was denied. On the morning of February 14, 1994, in a soundproofed execution room at Novocherkassk prison, Andrei Chikatilo was led from his cell. A single gunshot was fired to the back of his head, ending his life. He was buried in an unmarked grave within the prison grounds. His story of violence finally closed. Story 4. Vasily Terenovich Petrov was born on January 1, 1871, in the Vitebsk Governorate of the Russian Empire. He grew up in a large family that was very poor. His home life was difficult. Many members of his family suffered from alcoholism, meaning they drank strong alcohol very often and in large amounts. This environment affected him from a young age. When Vasily was 15 years old, he began drinking alcohol himself. This habit became a constant part of his life. As a young man, he was conscripted into the Russian army. This means he was legally required to join the military. He served for 4 years. After finishing his army service, he got married when he was 28 years old. In 1904, a war began between Russia and Japan. Vasily traveled to the far east of Russia during this time. There, he managed to earn a sizable amount of money. However, he did not save this money. He soon wasted all of it, likely on drinking and poor decisions. During this period, he also committed a crime. He robbed a military warehouse. For this crime, he received a prison sentence of 1 year. While Vasily was in prison, a tragic event occurred. His wife died from a disease called cholera. He was alone when he was released from prison. After his release, he decided to move to a city called Riga. In Riga, he met a Polish woman named Sofia. She was a widow, meaning her previous husband had died. Vasily married Sofia, and they later had 2 children together. Vasily's drinking problem continued. When he drank, he became violent. He often beat his wife, Sofia, and he also beat his children. His behavior at home was very bad and abusive. This was a pattern in his life for many years. In 1915, a larger war, World War I, was happening. German troops were moving into the Baltic region, where Riga is located. Because of the danger, Vasily moved his family away from Riga. They moved to the Volga region inside Russia. When the Russian Empire collapsed in 1917, a revolution began. Vasily joined the Red Army, which was one of the fighting groups in the revolution. During his time in the army, he learned to read and write. He was promoted to the position of platoon commander. Later, the Russian Civil War started. During this war, Vasily was captured by the opposing side, the White Army. He managed to escape from captivity. However, he was afraid he would be punished by his own army's court, called the Military Revolutionary Tribunal, for being captured. To avoid this punishment, he changed his identity. He changed his name from Vasily Terenovich Petrov to Vasily Ivanovich Komarov. With this new name, he moved to the city of Moscow with his wife and children in 1920. In Moscow, he settled at a house on Shabalovka Street. He began to work as a carriage driver and a trader of horses to support his family. In early 1921, a new government policy was declared in Moscow. This policy, called the New Economic Policy, allowed people to run private businesses. For Vasily Komarov, this meant he could more openly trade horses. He saw more customers who wanted to buy horses. This situation gave him an idea for a way to rob people. Komarov planned his crimes in a simple, repeated way. He would go to the horse markets in Moscow. There, he would find a customer who was looking to buy a horse. He would talk to the customer and agree on a sale. He would then invite the customer to his home on Shabalovka Street to see the horse and complete the deal. This seemed normal to the customers. When a customer arrived at his home, Komarov would bring them to the stable next to the house. He would then act friendly. He would offer the customer vodka, a strong alcohol, to drink. This was a common gesture. The customer would usually accept. Komarov would wait for the customer to become drunk or distracted from the alcohol. When the customer was not paying attention, Komarov would attack. He used a hammer as his weapon. Sometimes, if the hammer did not work, he would use a knife to cut the customer's throat. The attack was quick and violent. The customer would die from the injuries. After the customer was dead, Komarov would take all the money the person had brought to buy the horse. He would also take any other valuable items from the body. The amounts of money were often small. To hide the body, he had a method. He would put the corpse into a large sack, a bag used for grain or hay. He then had to dispose of the body. Sometimes, he would hide the sack in the stable, under piles of hay. Other times, he would bury the sack in the ground near his property. When he was more daring, he would carry the sack to the Moscow River at night and drop it into the water. He did this many times. In the year 1921 alone, he killed at least 17 people this way. He followed the same pattern each time. He would go to the market, find a customer, bring them home, offer vodka, kill them, rob them, and hide the body. His wife, Sophia, lived in the house with him. For almost a year, she said she did not know about the murders. Then, in 1922, she found out what her husband was doing. She discovered the truth by seeing evidence in the stable. Her reaction was calm. She did not report him to the police. Instead, she began to help him. She helped with cleaning up after the crimes and sometimes with luring the customers. With her help, Komarov killed at least 12 more people over the next 2 years. Komarov's actions became a routine. People at the market started to notice a pattern in his behavior. He came to the market every Wednesday and Friday. Often, he did not bring a horse to sell. He would talk to men, and then leave the market with them. He would always return alone. By early 1923, the Moscow police had begun to connect a series of disappearances. They had found several bodies of men in the river and in sacks dumped around the city. The police noticed that these bodies were often discovered on Thursday or Saturday mornings. This led them to believe the crimes were happening on Wednesday or Friday nights. Their investigation started to focus on the horse markets, as many of the missing men were last seen there. On March 18, 1923, police officers went to Komarov's home on Shabalovka Street. Their official reason for the visit was to investigate illegal alcohol production, which was a common check. Komarov let the officers look around his property. While searching the stable next to the house, an officer moved a large stack of hay. Under the hay, he found a human foot inside a sack. This was Komarov's most recent victim. When the officer shouted in alarm, Komarov knew he had been discovered. He ran back into his house. Instead of going to the door, he jumped out of a window to escape. He ran away from the area before the police could catch him. The police secured the scene and arrested his wife, Sophia, who was at home. A citywide search for Vasily Komarov began. He was caught by police in Moscow Oblast, the region surrounding the city, a short time later. He was brought back to Moscow for questioning. Under interrogation by the police, Komarov confessed. He said he could remember killing 33 men. He explained his method, meeting horse buyers, bringing them home, giving them vodka, and then killing them with a hammer or knife. He stated his motive was robbery. The police noted that the total amount of money he stole from all 33 victims was surprisingly small. After his confession, Komarov agreed to show the police where he had put the bodies. He led them to various locations around his property and to spots near the Moscow River. Because much time had passed, only 6 of the remaining undiscovered bodies were found. The other victims were not recovered. When asked about the killings, Komarov told the police that murder was an awfully easy job. While waiting in prison for his trial, Komarov tried to kill himself 3 times. He used different methods, but the guards stopped him each time. A forensic psychiatric examination was performed on him. The doctors found that he was sane, meaning he understood his crimes and that they were wrong. However, they also described him as an alcoholic degenerate and a psychopath. Sofia Komarov was also put on trial. The police and the court concluded that it was impossible for her not to have known about the murders happening in the stable next to their home. They also had evidence that she helped her husband after learning the truth. She was found guilty of being an accomplice to murder. At their trial, both Vasily and Sofia Komarov were found guilty of multiple murders. The sentence for their crimes was death. On June 18, 1923, they were taken from their prison cells. They were executed by a firing squad in Moscow. The case was then closed. The execution of Vasily and Sofia Komarov brought an end to the 2-year terror for Moscow's horse traders. Story 5. Viktor Sayenko was born on March 1, 1988, in the industrial city of Dnipropetrovsk, Ukraine. He lived with his parents in a standard apartment. His father was a lawyer and his mother worked in an office. Viktor attended local school number 34. He was an average student who did not stand out. He did not have many close friends. His parents provided for him, and his life was ordinary. In the same city, another boy named Igor Suprunyak was born on April 20, 1988. Igor's family lived in a similar apartment building. His father worked as a test pilot, which was a respected job. Igor was also a student at school number 34. He was more outgoing than Viktor. He liked to be the center of attention. The 2 boys knew each other from school, but were not close friends during their early years. A third boy, Alexander Hanja, was born in February 1988. He lived in the same area and also attended school number 34. Alexander was described by people who knew him as a more nervous and gentle boy. He was easily scared. He had a strong fear of blood. He loved animals and was careful even with his own pet kitten. When the boys were about 14 years old, their paths began to cross more often. Viktor and Igor found they had something in common. They were both afraid of heights and were sometimes bullied by older boys. They decided to try to overcome their fear of heights together. They would go to the balcony of Igor's apartment on the 14th floor. They would stand there for a long time, leaning over the railing. This shared activity made them closer friends. Around this same time, Alexander Hanja started spending time with Viktor and Igor. Alexander was still very squeamish. Igor Suprunyak had an idea. He suggested that to overcome their fears, they should hurt animals. They began capturing stray dogs in wooded areas near their homes. They would hang the dogs from trees and cut them open. They took photographs of themselves with the dead animals. In some photos, they drew symbols with the animal's blood. Igor Suprunyak was born on the same day as Adolf Hitler, and he sometimes joked about this fact. When they were 17, Igor beat up a local boy and stole his bicycle. He then sold this bicycle to Viktor. The police caught them for this crime. Because they were still minors, they did not go to jail. This was their first known encounter with the police. After finishing high school, their lives took different paths. Alexander Hanja worked several simple jobs. He worked as a pastry chef and later on a construction site. Eventually, he stopped working and was unemployed. Viktor Sayenko began studying at a metallurgy institute part-time. To earn money, he took a job as a security guard. Igor Sapruniak did not have an official job. His parents gave him a green Daewoo Lanos car as a gift. He used this car to work as an unlicensed taxi driver, picking up people for money. The three young men, now 19, still spent time together. In the months before the summer of 2007, they began using Igor's car for a new activity. They would pretend to be a taxi and pick up passengers. Then, instead of taking them to their destination, they would rob them. Alexander Hanja took part in at least one of these robberies. After that, he decided he did not want to do it anymore. He stopped participating in the robberies. This is where their story as a group stood in the early summer of 2007. In late June 2007, Viktor Sayenko and Igor Sapruniak began doing something worse than robbery. They started to kill people. They did not plan their first murder ahead of time. On the evening of June 25th, they were walking together. Igor was carrying a hammer hidden under his clothes. They saw a 33-year-old woman named Yekaterina Ilchenko walking home. As she passed by, Igor suddenly turned and hit her in the head with the hammer. She died where she fell. They left her body on the street. Less than an hour later, they saw a man named Roman Tatarevich sleeping on a bench near the same area. The bench was across the street from a prosecutor's office. They hit him many times in the head with blunt objects. He died on the bench. His face was badly damaged. They left the scene in Igor's green car. A few days later, on July 1st, two more people were found dead in a nearby town. They were Yevgenia Grishchenko and Nikolai Serchik. They had also been attacked with blunt force. The killings became more frequent. On the night of July 6th, they killed 3 people in the city. The first was a young man named Igor Nechvolota. He was walking home from a nightclub. They beat him to death near his apartment building. Later that night, they saw a 28-year-old woman named Yelena Shram. She was walking to her job as a night guard. Igor stepped forward and hit her with the hammer. After she fell, he hit her several more times. She was carrying a bag of clothes. They used the clothes to wipe the hammer clean and threw the bag away. Their third victim that night was a woman named Valentina Hanja. She was a mother of 3 with a sick husband. The next day, July 7th, they drove to a small town. They saw 2 14-year-old boys, Andrei Sidyak and Vadim Lyakov, going fishing. They attacked the boys with a hammer. Andrei was killed. Vadim was hurt, but managed to run away and hide in some trees. He survived. This was the first time someone survived an attack. Now, Sayenko and Sapruniak began to record their crimes. On July 12th, they saw a 48-year-old man named Sergei Yatsenko. He was riding his motorcycle. They attacked him in a wooded area by a road. During this attack, Viktor used a cell phone to make a video. The video shows Sergei on the ground. Igor hits him many times in the face with a hammer. He also uses a screwdriver to stab the man in the eye and stomach. They talk calmly during the attack. They check if he is still breathing. Afterward, they wash their hands and the hammer with a water bottle. They did not stop. On July 14th, they killed a 45-year-old woman named Natalia Mamerchuk. She was riding a scooter. They knocked her off the scooter and beat her to death with a metal pipe. They then drove away on her scooter. 2 children playing in a tent nearby saw and heard the attack. They hid and were not seen by the killers. For the next 2 weeks, they killed many more people. They often killed more than one person in a single day. They chose victims who seemed easy to attack. Their victims included older people, people who were drunk, and people who were homeless. They used hammers and iron bars. They often hit people in the face many times. They sometimes took things from their victims, like cell phones or money. They would sell these items at pawn shops in the city. They did not sexually assault any of their victims. During this time, they also took photographs. They went to the funerals of some of their victims. In the photographs, they are seen smiling and making rude gestures at the coffins. They also kept photographs of the animals they had killed when they were younger. After the attack on the two boys on July 7th, the police began to connect the crimes. The survivor, Vadim Lyakov, helped them create sketches of the two attackers. The two children who witnessed the killing of Natalia Mamerchuk on July 14th also gave descriptions that matched Lyakov's. The police realized one killer often used a green Daewoo Lanos car. A special police task force was sent from the capital, Kiev, to lead the investigation. The police had another clue. Some victims were missing their cell phones and other items. The investigators gave lists of these stolen items to pawn shops across the city. They asked the shop owners to look out for these specific things. On July 23rd, Igor Suprunyak went into a pawn shop in the Novokodatsky district. He tried to sell a cell phone for 150 Ukrainian hryvnias, which was about $30 at the time. The shop owner became suspicious. While Suprunyak was in the shop, he made a phone call. This call allowed the police to track his location. Police officers arrived and arrested Suprunyak and Viktor Sayenko right there in the pawn shop. The cell phone was confirmed to have been stolen from one of the murder victims. On the same day, police went to Alexander Hanja's apartment and arrested him too. When they arrived, Hanja tried to flush some stolen jewelry and cell phones down the toilet. The police recovered these items, but the water destroyed any evidence on the phones. All three men were taken to the police station. Sayenko and Hanja quickly confessed to their roles. Suprunyak also confessed at first, but later he changed his story and said he was not guilty. The police searched the men's homes and cars. They found the green Daewoo Lanos. In the car and in their apartments, they found clothes with blood stains on them. They also found the killer's cell phones and personal computers. On the cell phones and computers, the police found many photographs and videos. The videos showed the murders happening. One video showed the killing of Sergei Yatsenko in detail. Other videos showed different attacks. The photographs showed the men at funerals and with dead animals. The trial began in June 2008. In court, the prosecutors showed the video and photo evidence. Viktor Sayenko and Alexander Hanja pleaded guilty to all the charges against them. Igor Suprunyak pleaded not guilty. Suprunyak's lawyers argued he was insane, but the court did not accept this. The prosecutors said the careful way the crimes were committed proved the killers knew what they were doing. During the trial, experts confirmed the videos were real and had not been faked. When asked if they were the people in the videos, Sayenko and Suprunyak said they did not recognize them. The judge told them, "You are not blind." The court found Viktor Sayenko guilty of 18 murders and several robberies. It found Igor Suprunyak guilty of 21 murders and several robberies. They were both sentenced to life in prison. The judge said their main motive was a desire for morbid self-affirmation. Alexander Hanja was found guilty only for the 2 robberies he took part in months before the murders began. He was sentenced to 9 years in prison. Sayenko's and Suprunyak's lawyers appealed the verdict. They argued the evidence was not real. The Supreme Court of Ukraine reviewed the case, and in November 2009, it confirmed the life sentences. The appeal was rejected. Alexander Hanja served his 9-year sentence and was released from prison in 2019. The story of these crimes and the video evidence spread around the world, serving as a grim record of the events. Story 6. Nikolai Dzumagaliyev was born on November 15, 1952. He was born in a village called Yuzhinagash in Kazakhstan. At that time, Kazakhstan was part of the Soviet Union. His father was Kazakh. His mother was Belarusian. He was the 3rd child in the family, and the only boy. He had 3 sisters. His childhood was in the years after World War II. Life in the Soviet village was simple and often hard. He went to the local school. He finished the 9th grade. This is around the age of 15. After school, he did not continue with a regular academic education. Instead, he entered a special railway school. This school taught trades for working on the railways. He graduated from this school. After graduation, the Soviet system assigned him a job. He was sent to work in a city called Atara. This city is far from his home village. He worked there for some time. In 1970, when he was 18 years old, he was conscripted. This means he was legally required to join the Soviet army. He served in the army for a few years. His service was in chemical defense troops. He was stationed in Samarkand, which is in Uzbekistan. After he finished his army service, he returned to civilian life. He had 2 main goals. His first goal was to become a driver. His second goal was to enter a university to get a higher education. He tried to achieve both these goals. He was not successful in either attempt. He did not become a driver. He was also not accepted into any university. Because he could not get the jobs or education he wanted, he started to travel. He traveled to many faraway places within the Soviet Union. He went to the Ural Mountains. He went to Siberia. He went to Murmansk, a city in the far north. During these travels, he did many different jobs to earn money. He worked as a sailor on ships. He worked as a forwarder, which is a person who organizes the transport of goods. He worked as an electrician. He also worked as a bulldozer operator. He did not stay in any one job or place for very long. In 1977, after years of traveling, he returned to his home village of Uzinagash. He was 25 years old. He took a job there as a firefighter. This was a stable job in his hometown. In that same year, 1977, he contracted 2 different sexually transmitted diseases. He got syphilis and trichomoniasis. This showed he was sexually active but not careful. During his life up to this point, there were some patterns. He moved from job to job very often. He did not have a clear career path. He lived a wandering life for many years. He returned home but did not have a wife or a family of his own. His social life seemed limited. He had acquaintances from work, but no deep friendships were noted. These are facts about his life up to the age of 25. He lived with his parents again in Uzinagash. He worked his firefighter job. His parents and sisters were likely his main social circle. The diseases he caught required medical treatment. He received treatment for them from local doctors. This is where his early life story ends. After returning to Uzinagash and working as a firefighter, Nikolai Dzumagalev began to plan a violent act. In January 1979, he decided to kill someone. He planned his first murder with careful thought. He chose a location outside the village, a rural path where people sometimes walked alone. He waited there for a victim. A woman walked along that path. Dzumagalev attacked and killed her. He left her body there. On January 25, 1979, another person found the woman's body. The police were called. A criminal case was opened. The police investigated, but they did not find enough evidence to identify the killer. The case remained unsolved. After this first murder, Dzumagalev did not stop. During the rest of 1979, he killed 5 more people. The victims were mainly women. He used similar methods. He would find people who were alone, often in isolated areas. He would attack them by surprise. He did not use a gun for these murders. He used other tools like knives or heavy objects. After killing them, he would do something with the bodies. He would cut them into pieces. He would also take parts of the bodies with him. He engaged in cannibalism, which means he ate human flesh from his victims. On August 21, 1979, an unrelated violent event happened. Dzumagalev was drinking alcohol with other firefighters. He became very drunk. While in this drunken state, he handled a gun. The gun fired by accident. The bullet hit and killed one of his fellow firefighters. This was not a planned murder. Because of this shooting, the police arrested Zumagalev. He was taken into custody. While he was in custody, the authorities ordered a psychiatric evaluation. He was sent to a famous psychiatric hospital in Moscow called the Serbsky Center. Doctors at the center examined him. They diagnosed him with a mental illness called schizophrenia. Because of this diagnosis, he was not held responsible for the accidental shooting in a criminal court. Instead, he was sent to a special psychiatric hospital for treatment. He stayed there for less than a year. The doctors decided he was improved enough to release. He was let go and returned to his village of Yezhinagash. Very soon after his release, he started killing again. He committed 3 more murders. His methods were the same. He targeted vulnerable individuals, killed them, and dismembered their bodies. He continued his practice of cannibalism. His 9th murder was different because it happened in his own home and involved someone he knew. He invited a group of friends to his house. These friends brought their girlfriends with them. They were all socializing together. At some point, Zumagalev took one of the male guests into a separate room. He killed this man there. While the other guests were in another part of the house, Zumagalev began to cut the body apart. The other guests wondered where their friend had gone. They went to look for him. They entered the room and saw Zumagalev. He was on his knees. He was covered in blood. The body parts of their friend were visible. The guests were terrified. They immediately ran out of the house in panic. They went directly to the local police station to report what they had seen. The police officers quickly went to Zumagalev's house. They arrived and found him still in the room with the body. The scene was very shocking. The police were so stunned by what they saw that, for a moment, they did not act. Zumagalev used this moment of shock to his advantage. He ran past the police officers and escaped from the house. He ran away naked into the nearby mountains. He carried a hatchet with him. This happened on December 18, 1980. After Zumagalev escaped naked into the mountains on December 18, 1980, a large search began immediately. Police and local volunteers tracked him through the cold terrain. The next day, on December 19th, they found him. He was captured and taken into custody. A relative who had helped him after some of the crimes was also arrested. The police now had direct evidence from the witnesses who saw him with the body and from the scene in his house. They connected him to the recent murder and began to investigate his possible involvement in the earlier unsolved murders. On December 3, 1981, Zumagalev went on trial. In court, the doctors from the Serbsky Center presented their past diagnosis. They stated he had schizophrenia. Because of this, the judge and the court psychiatrists declared him legally insane. This meant he was not considered responsible for his actions in a criminal sense. He was not given a prison sentence. Instead, the court ordered that he be sent to a special psychiatric hospital for forced treatment. He was held there for the next 8 years. On August 29, 1989, hospital staff were transferring him to a different, less secure mental hospital. During this transfer, he managed to escape. He overpowered the staff or tricked them and used the official transport car to flee. He became a fugitive. For many months, he traveled across the Soviet Union to hide. There were reports of murders in Moscow and in Kazakhstan that matched his methods, but he was not caught. He knew the police would watch his home village, so he avoided it. He hid in the mountains of Kyrgyzstan for nearly 2 years. He gathered wild medicinal plants and traded them with local villagers for food and supplies. During this time, the police searched for him using airplanes and vehicles. To mislead them, Zumagalev created a plan. He wrote a letter to an acquaintance. In the letter, he wrote that he was in Moscow and made a threatening comment about women there. He gave this letter to a trusted person and asked them to travel to Moscow to mail it, so the postmark would be from there. The person did this. When the letter was received, the news spread. Newspapers reported that the cannibal killer was in Moscow, causing fear. The police focused some of their search efforts there, which was what Zhumagalev wanted. By early 1991, living as a fugitive became too difficult. Zhumagalev decided he wanted to be arrested for a small crime, so he could go to a regular prison. In April 1991, in the city of Fergana in Uzbekistan, he stole some sheep. He was caught for this theft. When arrested, he lied to the police. He said he was a Chinese citizen who did not speak Russian well. He was put in a regular jail cell for thieves. He confessed easily to stealing the sheep. However, when police asked how he entered the country, his story fell apart. He could not give consistent details. The local police became suspicious and sent a request for help to Moscow. A colonel from the Moscow police, Yuri Debayagin, saw the request. Colonel Debayagin knew about Zhumagalev's escape and his description. He traveled to Fergana. When he saw the sheep thief, he recognized him immediately as Nikolai Zhumagalev. The fugitive was formally identified. He was then taken back to Kazakhstan under heavy guard and placed in a high-security psychiatric prison. In the following years, he remained in the psychiatric facility. Doctors monitored him. He sometimes seemed calm and worked repairing small machines. He once applied to the court to be given the death penalty, but doctors saw this as a sign of his mental illness, not a real request. In September 2014, a further trial was held for a 10th murder. This killing had occurred in 1990 in the city of Aktobe, during his time as a fugitive. New evidence and his own confession were presented. He was found guilty of this murder. Because of his insanity ruling, he was not sentenced to death but to continued, permanent confinement in a strict psychiatric institution. He remains there today, in a hospital in the village of Aktas, surrounded by fences and wire. The doctors there have sometimes said he seems orderly and might be released, but other experts strongly disagree, stating he remains very dangerous. The official decision is that he must stay confined for life. The story of his crimes is closed by his permanent imprisonment. This concludes the story. Story 7. Bobby Joe Long was born on October 14, 1953, in the small town of Canova, West Virginia. His parents were Joe and Louetta Long. From a very young age, Bobby's body was different because of a genetic condition. This condition meant he had an extra chromosome. This caused his body to produce more estrogen, which is a hormone usually found in higher amounts in women. Because of the extra estrogen, Bobby developed noticeable breast tissue as a boy. The other children at his school saw that Bobby looked different. They teased him cruelly for having breasts. This teasing happened often and made Bobby feel ashamed and isolated. When he was a teenager, he had surgery to remove the breast tissue. This surgery was meant to make him look more like other boys his age. Bobby also had several accidents when he was young where he hurt his head. He fell from a tree once and hit his head very hard. Another time, he was in a bicycle accident and his head was injured again. He also had a car accident later where his head struck the windshield. These injuries caused concussions. Bobby's life at home was unstable. His relationship with his mother, Louetta, was not a normal mother-son relationship. She had him sleep in her bed with her until he was a teenager. Louetta worked nights. She would often come home very late with different boyfriends. Bobby resented these men. He did not like his mother bringing strangers home. After high school, Bobby got married. He married his girlfriend from high school in 1974. They had 2 children together. The marriage was not happy. Bobby was abusive to his wife. He was both physically and sexually abusive. His wife could not live with this treatment. She filed for divorce in 1980. The court papers from the divorce stated the reason was domestic and sexual abuse. After his divorce, Bobby's life did not improve. He was arrested for attacking a woman. This was an assault charge. He was found guilty and put on probation. This meant he had to check in with an officer, but could live in the community, as long as he did not break the law again. In 1983, wanting a fresh start, Bobby Joe Long moved to the Tampa Bay area in Florida. He was now 30 years old. He was a man with a history of head injuries, a strange and close relationship with his mother, a failed marriage due to his own abuse, and a criminal record for assault. In 1984, Bobby Joe Long was living in an apartment in Tampa, Florida. He was on probation for the earlier assault charge. In March of that year, he met a 20-year-old woman named Artis Wick. She was also known as N. Artis had hitchhiked from Indiana to Florida. Bobby Long picked her up while she was hitchhiking. He then drove her to a secluded, rural area. There, he raped her. After raping her, he strangled her with his hands. He left her body in that remote location. Her body was not found until November of that year. Bobby Long did not stop. His method was often the same. He would look for women who were alone or in vulnerable situations. He would use his car to approach them. Sometimes he would pretend to be a normal driver offering a ride. Other times he would force them into his car. In early November 1984, he saw a 33-year-old woman named Linda Nuttall. She was at her own home. Bobby Long broke into her house. He attacked her there and raped her. Linda Nuttall survived this attack. Then, in the very early morning of November 3rd, 1984, Bobby Long was driving around. He saw a 17-year-old girl named Lisa McVeigh. Lisa was riding her bicycle home from her job at a donut shop. It was dark outside. Bobby Long used his car to force her off the road. He got out, grabbed her, and forced her into his car. He put a blindfold over her eyes so she could not see. He drove Lisa McVeigh to his apartment. He took her inside. Over the next 26 hours, he kept her tied up and blindfolded. He repeatedly raped her. Lisa was very afraid, but she tried to think of a way to help police find the man if she ever got free. While she was blindfolded, she deliberately touched many surfaces in the apartment. She did this to leave her fingerprints behind. She also listened carefully to sounds. She heard the sound of a specific electronic keyboard for entering a PIN. She recognized this sound from her job. It was the sound of an ATM machine. This told her he had used his bank card at a certain time. Bobby Long told Lisa he would let her go. He drove her to a different area, still blindfolded, and left her there. Lisa McVeigh immediately went to the police. She told them everything she remembered. She described the inside of the apartment in detail. She described the feel of the carpet and the bedspread. She told them about hearing the ATM sound. Police believed her detailed information was very reliable. Police used the information about the ATM. They checked records from all ATM machines in the area at the time Lisa said she heard the sound. This helped them find a list of people who used their cards then. One of the names on that list was Bobby Joe Long. Police also knew he was on probation for assault. They began to watch him. While police were watching Bobby Long, they were also investigating the deaths of several other women. The bodies of 9 women had been found in the Tampa Bay area since March. All of them had been raped and strangled. Forensic experts found tiny red fibers on some of the victims' bodies. These fibers were from a type of red carpet. Police did not yet know who owned that carpet. Bobby Long was not aware that Lisa McVeigh had given the police so much information. On November 16, 1984, he went to a movie theater. Police officers were waiting for him there. They arrested him in the parking lot. They arrested him for the kidnapping and rape of Lisa McVeigh. This arrest was based on the evidence Lisa provided and the ATM records. After Bobby Joe Long was arrested for the crimes against Lisa McVeigh, the police investigation grew much larger. Detectives now strongly suspected he was connected to the murders of other women. They got a warrant to search his apartment and his car, a 1978 Pontiac Grand Prix. In the car, they found red carpet fibers. These fibers matched the unusual red fibers found on the bodies of several murder victims. This was a key physical link. The police also gathered other evidence from his home. They collected hairs, clothing, and other items. Forensic experts compared this evidence to details from the unsolved murders. The way the victims had been tied, the types of knots used, and the marks left on their bodies all pointed to one person. During questioning, Bobby Long was read his rights. He first agreed to talk without a lawyer. He confessed to kidnapping and raping Lisa McVeigh. Then detectives showed him photographs of the murdered women. Long then said he wanted a lawyer. The police did not get him a lawyer immediately. They continued to question him. During this time, he confessed to killing 8 women in Hillsborough County and 1 woman in Pasco County. However, because he had asked for a lawyer, these later confessions were not allowed to be used in court. The judge ruled they were obtained improperly. This meant the prosecutors could not use his own words about the murders at his trial. They had to rely entirely on the physical evidence. The physical evidence was very strong. The FBI crime lab conducted a detailed analysis. Their report stated that the red fibers from Long's car carpet matched fibers found on victims Chanel Williams, Karen Dinsfriend, Kimberly Hops, and Kathleen Reeves. This fiber evidence directly connected his car to the bodies of these women. Facing this strong evidence, Long's lawyers from the public defender's office made a deal with the prosecutors. This deal is called a plea bargain. On September 24, 1985, Bobby Joe Long pleaded guilty to 8 murders and to the crimes against Lisa McVeigh. For these charges, he was given 26 life sentences in prison. One murder was not included in this plea deal, the murder of Michelle Sims. For this crime, the state decided to seek the death penalty. A trial was held only to decide his punishment for Michelle Sims's murder, since he had already confessed to it. In 1986, a jury found him guilty and recommended the death penalty. The judge agreed and sentenced him to death by lethal injection. Long appealed his death sentence for many years. In one appeal, his murder conviction for victim Virginia Johnson was overturned due to lack of evidence. His death sentence for other murders was upheld after all appeals were exhausted. On April 23, 2019, the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, signed a death warrant for Bobby Joe Long. This set a date for his execution. On May 23, 2019, Long was executed by lethal injection at the Florida State Prison. He was pronounced dead at 7 p.m. Bobby Joe Long was executed for his crimes, bringing a final end to the case over 30 years after his arrest. Story 8. Wayne Bertram Williams was born on May 27, 1958, in Atlanta, Georgia. He was an only child. His parents were Homer and Faye Williams. Both of his parents were school teachers. They lived in a neighborhood called Dixie Hills in southwest Atlanta. The family was respected in their community. From a young age, Wayne was very interested in electronics and music. He was a smart boy but often spent time alone. He liked to build things. As a teenager, he built his own small radio station that could broadcast a signal to nearby houses. He spent most of his free time in his room working on this equipment. Wayne went to Frederick Douglass High School. He did not play sports or join many clubs. Instead, he focused on his interest in radio. He often visited local radio stations, WIGO and WAOK, after school. He would talk to the disc jockeys and learn about the equipment. The people at the station saw him as an eager young man who wanted to be in the music business. After he finished high school, Wayne did not go to a 4-year college. He took some classes at a community college. He wanted to become a music producer or a talent scout. He started a small business called Wayne Williams Productions. He would find young local singers and promise to help them become famous. He told people he had important connections in the music industry. Wayne's parents supported him. He continued to live at home into his 20s. He used his family's car to drive around the city for his business. He was known in some parts of Atlanta for always carrying cameras and audio recording equipment. He would tell people he was doing interviews for radio. However, Wayne's business was not very successful. He did not make much money. The singers he promised to help often did not become famous. Some people who worked with him later said he would get very angry if they questioned his plans. He did not like being told no. He had a strong need to be seen as an important person in the music scene. Wayne spent most of his time driving around Atlanta, looking for young musical talent. He often went to poor neighborhoods. He talked to teenagers and young adults on the street. He told them he could get them auditions. His habits were well known. He was a familiar figure in certain areas, always talking about his big plans in the music industry. Wayne Williams continued his daily routine of driving around Atlanta in his family's station wagon, looking for young men to recruit for his music business. During this time, from mid-1979 to May 1981, a series of terrible events happened in the city. Many African American children and young men were killed or went missing. The city was very afraid, and the police were under great pressure to find the person responsible. In the early morning of May 22, 1981, police officers were watching a bridge over the Chattahoochee River. They were there because several bodies had been found in the river near that bridge before. At about 2:50 a.m., the officers heard a loud splash in the water below the bridge. It sounded like a large object had been thrown into the river. Shortly after the splash, a car drove off the bridge. It was the only car on the bridge at that time. The police stopped the car. The driver was Wayne Williams. The officers asked him what he was doing. Wayne told them he was a music promoter. He said he was on his way to check the address of a young singer named Cheryl Johnson for an audition later that morning. The police wrote down his information and let him go. Later, the police checked the story. They found that the phone number Wayne gave for the singer was fake. The name Cheryl Johnson was also not real. 2 days later, on May 24th, the body of a 27-year-old man named Nathaniel Cater was found in the Chattahoochee River, downstream from the bridge. He had been missing for 4 days. People who knew Cater said they had last seen him with Wayne Williams. A medical examiner said Cater likely died from asphyxia, which means he could not breathe. The police now believed the splash they heard was Nathaniel Cater's body hitting the water. They believed Wayne Williams had thrown him from the bridge. The police focused their investigation on Wayne Williams. They searched his home and car. They found many fibers from carpets, blankets, and clothes in his house and station wagon. Police also had fibers from the bodies and clothes of other victims who had been killed before Cater. These included a young man named Jimmy Ray Payne. Forensic experts later said the fibers from some victims matched fibers from Wayne Williams's home, his car, and even the hair of his family's German Shepherd dog. People who worked with Wayne were interviewed. Some told police they had seen scratches on Wayne's face and arms around the times of some of the murders. The police thought these scratches could have been made by victims fighting for their lives. Wayne Williams knew the police suspected him. On June 4, 1981, he held a press conference outside his house. He told reporters he was innocent. He volunteered that he had taken 3 lie detector tests for the police. He said the results were not clear. He wanted the public to believe he was cooperating. The police did not arrest him immediately after the press conference. They continued to watch him and gather evidence. They talked to more people who knew the victims. Some witnesses said they had seen Wayne Williams with other young men who were later found dead. The police felt they were building a strong case, but they did not have enough to charge him for all the murders. They focused on the deaths of Nathaniel Cater and Jimmy Ray Payne because the physical evidence there was the strongest. The police arrested Wayne Williams on June 21, 1981. He was charged with the murders of 2 men, Nathaniel Cater and Jimmy Ray Payne. The police believed he was responsible for more deaths but they started with these two cases because they had the most physical evidence. Wayne Williams's trial began on January 6, 1982. The prosecution's case was built heavily on fiber evidence. Experts testified that fibers found on the victims matched materials from Williams's environment. These included a rare green nylon carpet in his home, fibers from his bedspread, fibers from clothes in his home, and hairs from his family's dog. The prosecution showed that these fibers were microscopically identical to those found on several victims. They also proved that the type of carpet in his home was not made until 1971, contradicting Williams's claim that it was installed earlier. Witnesses testified that they had seen Wayne Williams with several of the victims when they were still alive. The prosecution also highlighted the inconsistencies in Williams's stories. He changed his account of where he was and what he was doing on important nights. His story about going to see a singer named Cheryl Johnson the night police stopped him on the bridge was proven to be a complete fabrication. Wayne Williams chose to testify in his own defense. During his time on the witness stand, he became angry and argumentative. He disagreed loudly with the prosecutors. People in the courtroom, including members of the jury, saw him as combative and unlikable. This behavior hurt his case. After hearing all the evidence for 2 months, the jury deliberated for about 12 hours. On February 27, 1982, they found Wayne Williams guilty of the 2 murders. The judge sentenced him to 2 consecutive life sentences in prison. After Williams was arrested, the killings of young African-American men in Atlanta stopped. Williams was never tried for any of the other murders. However, based on the fiber evidence and the end of the killings, police officially closed the files on 22 other deaths, attributing them to him. Over the years, Williams appealed his conviction many times. He claimed new evidence would prove his innocence. He said members of the Ku Klux Klan were responsible and that police ignored that lead. In 2006, a federal judge rejected his request for a new trial. In 2007 and 2010, new DNA tests were done on hairs found on 2 victims. The results from both tests were consistent with Wayne Williams's DNA and the DNA of his dog, though scientists stated the evidence was not conclusive on its own. In March 2019, Atlanta's mayor and police chief announced they would retest evidence from the murder cases using modern technology. They wanted to see if any new answers could be found. This investigation is still pending. Wayne Williams has been denied parole multiple times. He remains in prison at Telfair State Prison. The next time he will be eligible for a parole hearing is in 2027. The families of the victims have had different reactions over the years. Some believe firmly in his guilt, while others doubt he acted alone or was responsible for all the crimes attributed to him. Wayne Williams continues to serve his life sentence for the murders that terrified a city. Story 9. Robert Charles Brown was born on October 31, 1952, in a small town called Coushatta in Louisiana. He was the youngest of 9 children. His family ran a dairy farm. His father's name was Ronald. Later, his father got a job as a deputy sheriff for the local police. Robert's mother's side of the family had a history of deep sadness, which is also called depression. His mother's father had killed himself by drowning. Despite this, people in the town saw the Brown family as a good family. They believed the parents cared for all their children. As a child, Robert was intelligent and good at mathematics. However, his grades in school were only average. He did not have many friends and was mostly alone. He was also known for having a very quick temper. This means he would get angry very easily over small things. He left high school just before he turned 17 years old. He did not graduate. Instead, he decided to join the United States Army. While in the Army, he was sent to fight in the Vietnam War 2 times. He was also sent to South Korea for a time. His time in the Army did not end well. In 1976, the Army forced him to leave because he was using illegal drugs. This is called a dishonorable discharge. It is a very bad mark on a military record. After returning to Louisiana, Robert moved around often and had many different jobs. He worked in Louisiana, Texas, and Colorado. One job was delivering flowers. Another job was working as a clerk at a convenience store called a Quick Stop. He did not stay at any job for a very long time. Robert was married 5 different times. Each of his marriages ended in divorce. All of his wives were small and thin women. He had one son, named Thomas, from his second marriage. His second wife was a woman from Vietnam. His last 3 wives said similar things about him. They said he would become physically violent if they made a small mistake. They said his anger did not make sense. His 5th wife said that Robert told her he hated women and he hated police officers. Before he was ever arrested for murder, Robert had been in trouble with the law for other crimes. In Louisiana, he was found guilty of stealing a car. There was a warrant for his arrest for stealing a bell from a church. In 1986, he was found guilty of stealing a pickup truck. Police reports also connected him to other illegal activities. These included drug crimes, breaking into buildings, setting fires on purpose, and being cruel to animals. These reports were from different times and places as he moved around. After returning to Louisiana and moving through various jobs, Robert Brown began a series of violent acts. The first known event happened in March of 1980 in his hometown of Coushatta. He met a 16-year-old girl named Catherine Jean Hayes. She was often called Fuzzy. He met her in a parking lot of a chicken stand. He offered her a ride to his mother's house. According to his later statement, they had consensual sex there. Afterward, they argued. Later, when Catherine fell asleep, Brown took a pair of shoelaces and strangled her to death. He then put her body in his car. He drove to a bridge between the towns of Clarence and Montgomery and dumped her body off the side into the water below. Her skull was found in a creek months later, in October. Very soon after, on March 30th, 1980, another woman from Coushatta disappeared. Her name was Fayeline Self. Brown worked as a maintenance man at the Rivertown apartment complex where she lived. This job gave him keys to all the apartments. He later said he had noticed Faye at a nightclub. In the late night, he used his key to enter her apartment while she slept. He carried a rag soaked in a chemical called methyl chloroform, which was found in a product called Red Ant Killer. He used this rag to try to make her unconscious. He stated that he then looked for rope to tie her up. When he returned, he claimed she had suffocated and was dead. He then removed her body from the apartment. He said he drove to the Red River and disposed of her body. Faye Self's body has never been found. 2 months later, on May 27, 1980, a third woman from the same apartment complex was killed. Her name was Wanda Faye Hudson. She was a 20-year-old supermarket cashier. Again, using his maintenance key, Brown entered her apartment late at night. He again used a rag with the Red Ant Killer chemical to try to make her unconscious. He then stabbed her many times with a screwdriver, causing her death. Her boyfriend found her body the next day. A medical examination showed she had been stabbed approximately 30 times. Brown left Louisiana and was living in Texas by 1984. On February 6th of that year, the body of a 17-year-old girl named Nydia Mendoza was found near a highway outside Houston. Her body had been severely damaged. Her head and legs had been cut off. She had also been stabbed many times in the chest and other areas. Brown later claimed he met her at a strip club. He said she agreed to go to his hotel room. After they had sex, he strangled her. He then used a dull knife from the room's kitchen to cut up her body. In March of 1984, another death was linked to Brown. A woman named Melody in Bush was found dead in a ditch in Flatonia, Texas. A medical test showed she died from a high level of acetone poison in her body. Brown gave a different account. He said he met her in a motel bar. He said he used a chemical called ether to make her unconscious in his room. He then stated he stabbed her to death. By 1987, Brown was living in Colorado Springs, Colorado. On November 10th of that year, a 15-year-old girl named Rocio Sperry went to the movies and never returned home. Her husband found her car abandoned in a parking lot days later. Brown later said he was responsible for her disappearance. He claimed he killed her, cut up her body, and scattered the pieces in a remote area. Her remains were never found. On September 17, 1991, in Colorado Springs, a 13-year-old girl named Heather Dawn Church was babysitting her younger brother at their home in an area called Black Forest. An intruder came into the home and took Heather. A massive search by police and the community began. Her remains were found 2 years later, in September 1993, in a wooded area. She had died from a severe blow to the head. During the investigation of her home, police found 3 fingerprints on a window screen. These fingerprints were collected as evidence. Later in 1991, Brown said he was in West Memphis, Arkansas. He claimed he met a 21-year-old woman named Lisa Marie Lowe in a club in Memphis, Tennessee. He said he paid her for sex. He drove her to a wooded area near West Memphis. After having sex, he strangled her. He possibly also shot her. He then threw her body into a river. Her body was found 3 weeks after she went missing. The last event Brown described happened on March 12, 1992, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He said he met a 39-year-old man named Timothy Lee Warren in a restaurant. He convinced Warren to go with him to a park for sex. After they arrived and got out of the vehicle, Brown overpowered him. He then shot Warren twice in the head with a .22 caliber gun. Warren's body was found by a park employee early the next morning. The discovery of Heather Dawn Church's remains in September 1993 gave the police their first solid piece of evidence: the fingerprints from the window screen at her home. A police investigator named Tom Carney submitted these fingerprints to a national computer system called AFIS, Automated Fingerprint Identification System. This system compares fingerprints from crime scenes to those collected from people who have been arrested before. In March 1995, the system found a match. The fingerprints matched Robert Charles Brown, who was in the system because of his past arrests for crimes like car theft in Louisiana. Based on this fingerprint match, the police in Colorado arrested Robert Brown on March 28, 1995. He was charged with the first-degree murder of Heather Dawn Church. Facing the possibility of the death penalty if found guilty at a trial, Brown chose to make a deal with the prosecutors. This deal is called a plea bargain. He agreed to plead guilty to murdering Heather Church. In exchange, the state promised they would not ask for the death sentence. They also agreed to drop an additional charge of kidnapping. Because of this plea, the judge sentenced Robert Brown to life in prison without the possibility of parole. This means he would stay in prison for the rest of his life. After being sent to prison, Brown began sending strange letters to the El Paso County Sheriff's Office. The letters contained odd phrases and poems. One famous line he wrote was, "The score is you won, the other team 48." This made investigators think he might be claiming to have committed many more murders. Some investigators, including a retired agent named Charlie Hess, began to visit and write to Brown in prison. Over many conversations, Brown slowly gave more details. He claimed he had killed 48 or 49 people since the year 1970. He said his victims were in many different states, including Louisiana, Texas, Colorado, and Arkansas. He described different methods of killing, such as strangulation, stabbing, and shooting. These confessions led various police departments to reopen their old, unsolved murder cases. Investigators from Louisiana, Texas, and other states traveled to Colorado to interview Brown in prison. They showed him photographs and case files. Based on details he provided that were not public knowledge, police began to believe he was likely responsible for several of the murders he described. For example, his knowledge of the apartment complex where Faye Self and Wanda Hudson lived, and his description of using a rag with a specific chemical, made his confessions seem credible for those cases. However, much of what Brown said could not be checked. He often gave few specific details about the victims or locations. Many investigators believed he was exaggerating the number of people he killed. They thought he might be seeking attention or trying to annoy the police. Some family members of the victims he claimed, like the family of Faye Self, did not believe he was the killer. They pointed to another suspect they believed was responsible. The only other murder charge that resulted from these confessions was for the death of Rocio Sperry, the teenager who disappeared in 1987. In 2006, over 10 years after his first imprisonment, Brown was formally charged with her murder. Again, he chose to make a plea bargain to avoid a trial and a possible death sentence. He pleaded guilty to first-degree murder in Rocio Sperry's death. The judge gave him a second sentence of life in prison without parole, to be served at the same time as his first life sentence. No other murders have been officially solved or led to new charges against Robert Brown. Police departments consider him a strong suspect in several other cases, like those of Catherine Hayes, Wanda Hudson, and Nydia Mendoza, but there was not enough physical evidence to charge him with those crimes. Advances in DNA technology have been used to try to link him to other crimes, but no definitive connections have been made public. Robert Charles Brown remains in prison at the Limon Correctional Facility in Colorado. He is now an old man. The families of Heather Church and Rocio Sperry have the legal knowledge that he is the person who killed their loved ones. For the families of the other women he described, their cases remain officially unsolved, though many investigators believe Brown was responsible. The man who claimed dozens of murders will spend the rest of his life in a prison cell, convicted only for 2.